Well, hello there. Today we're at Westerville, we're at Alum Creek in West Royal. Actually, it's between West Royal and Delaware, and it's beautiful. It's actually like a lake, and they have like a lot of nature, they have a lot of camping, and you can really do a lot of different things up here. But I always want to make this video, and since I'm here today, swimming and kicking it, I want to talk to you guys about cowrie shells. So let's see if I can run through and remember all this about cowrie shells. So cowrie shells were originally based in the India area, I think in Maldives, if I'm correct. And it was used back in the day for many things, especially in Africa. And in Africa, they have different paintings on walls from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago about cowrie shells and how they implemented cowrie shells into their daily lives. And cowrie shells were actually used a lot for currency. And they were used since ancient times. They were used in ancient Egypt or Kemet. They were used in the kingdom of Buganda, which is in the Burundi, Rwanda area. And they were used in West Africa especially as well, but they were used all over Africa. So in West Africa, they were actually used as a currency. And since they couldn't be replicated so easily, outside of you having to go all the way to like the Indian Ocean to get them, this was a very, very good currency and money at the time. So it's interesting because a lot of places in Africa actually only took cowrie shells for hundreds of years. And with the slave trade, with local people, regardless of where it was at, right, they actually used cowrie shells throughout Africa. And with the Europeans, they would actually use this as money. They would actually carry around cowrie shells and they would exchange them for goods and use it as money. It was a currency. So if you look at when Europeans were in West Africa, especially, they were all over Africa, but especially in West Africa, different European countries, they actually wanted to eventually move on to minted coins or currency that were made out of different type of metals. But it was so ingrained into Africa at the time, cowrie shells as a currency, that the locals would actually only accept cowrie shells and they wouldn't accept the new coins that the Europeans were actually making and introducing into Africa, or at least trying to introduce into Africa. So it's interesting because at some point it actually cost the Europeans more to produce the coins versus using the cowrie shell. So at some point they tried to stop importing so many of them into specifically West Africa for the most part. So it's really interesting because the cowrie shells actually broke down into such a small amount of currency that it even cost them too much money to make new coins to represent a smaller currency to buy certain things. So a lot of the local people in East Africa, West Africa, they would actually demand that the Europeans pay in cowrie shells when they traded or whatever they were doing for spices, for slaves, whatever they were doing. And they would actually want to be paid in cowrie shells. It was very interesting because the relationship between the Europeans trying to get certain African societies to cross over to their money and their way of doing things, and the cowrie shells being instilled into the community was a very, very long struggle for hundreds of years to get Africa to basically move over to those currencies. Now, was it all of Africa? No, but it was a lot of different civilizations within Africa that used the cowrie shells. You can even look at ancient Egypt, right? There was pharaohs that were buried with cowrie shells. If you had a certain amount of cowrie shells, it showed the status of who you were in certain societies as well. And the cowrie shells can be found in Ethiopia now with the Hamar tribe or Hammer tribe. They actually still decorate and wear cowrie shells as a traditional way of beauty. They're not necessarily currency right now, at least to what I know. Maybe some parts in Africa, cowrie shells might still be currency as far as trade and other goods, but these cowrie shells are really important. They were also used for spiritual practices as well, and they were used as amulets and shields from bad energy and bad things, specifically depending on which religion, from tribe to tribe or kingdom to kingdom. It just depends on what time period. And they were actually used as food at one point, which is interesting to know because I don't really know how you would eat these things, but maybe you can. I guess when they're fresh, they're out the ocean, whatever creatures inside of them, maybe you can fry them or you can eat them, or maybe they're more brittle. I don't necessarily know. But it's also interesting because these shells after they were used for money, they were used for a lot of traditional decoration, spiritual things. Cowrie shells were actually used up into 1970. That was one of the last documented cowrie shell transactions in West Africa. And that was one of the last ones that they know of that was actually cowrie shells was used to exchange things. I think it was in northern Ghana, if I'm correct. But now you'll find cowrie shells everywhere throughout Africa. You'll find on calabashes, which is like the gourds, the African gourds. Certain ethnic groups and certain peoples, they still decorate them or put them on their gourds, like drinking gourds. And then you'll find them obviously for decoration with tribal or different ethnicities within Africa. And it's really an interesting thing because I actually have a lot of cowrie shells and I didn't really know the history until recently of cowrie shells. I knew they were a currency, but I didn't really put two and two together about how widespread they actually were, because I've seen them from East Africa to South Africa to North Africa to West Africa. So very interesting stuff. You know, it would be interesting if we could actually still use cowrie shells amongst each other, because think about it, you can trade salt, you can trade other goods, you can trade limestone, cubic zirconium, or whatever the rock might be, iron, diamonds. So it would be interesting to see if you could actually use these for trade. And within your community, maybe you could use cowrie shells. And let's say, for example, somebody wants to buy something small for you, some shoes, maybe you can give them, I don't know, 100 cowrie shells, and then that would be currency between you guys. And next time that you want to get rid of something, then you can take back those cowrie shells, 40, 50, whatever. I have to do more research on like how much each one was worth. Or maybe that's just a dream, but I'm just saying it would be interesting to use cowrie shells in the community. That would be really interesting if we created our own currency. That would be really interesting. Until next time, please like, subscribe, turn on the bell notification so you get all my videos. Add me on all social medias, which is Afric Network. And until next time, maybe you should get a cowrie shell and check it out. Peace. One love.